In this video, I'm going to take up Dawn Hottinger's challenge and choose 10 albums that have influenced my taste in music. What I've realised in doing this is that really it needs to be done in two separate parts. In this video, I'm choosing 10 normal albums as opposed to 10 compilation albums. When I started putting this challenge together, I realised that as I started my record collection, many of the albums were compilation albums, either greatest hits packages or themed albums with various artists. And I was influenced by a lot of them. I may do a video for that at a later date, but for now it's dedicated albums. So let's kick it off with the Beatles. There's no denying that the Beatles have influenced my musical taste more than any other artist. A Hard Day's Night takes me back to being a kid, and I've chosen it because it's the first of their albums that I can actually remember. My parents had an amusement arcade on the seafront at Burnham-on-Sea, and my dad would pipe music through the arcade, and this was one of the albums that he used to play. I was 4 when this came out, and I'd had the start of my fledgling record collection when I'd been bought the I Want to Hold Your Hand single at the end of 1963 when I was only 3. The songs on this album take me back to being a young child, and I've loved them for as long as I can remember. And as for the film itself, I love that too. Next up is the summer of 1969, and we've got another smaller arcade on the same seafront, and that's being looked after by my brother, who's nearly 10 years older than me. Think Motown, Atlantic, Stax and Chess Records. And that was my brother at the time. He'd be playing albums from that genre of music, and this album was one that I picked up on. I loved the popular songs from this album, but the one that jumped out at me even then was on side 2, and it was called I'd Be a Fool Right Now. At 9, I didn't understand the nuances of the song, but I loved the feel of it. The music was fantastic and the chorus grabbed me even then. This was a start of love for his work, and from the time of this album, I've loved most of his output. I started buying his albums from Talking Book and also picked this one up to add it to my collection. Carole King's up next. 1971's Tapestry made an impression on me. Firstly, Smackwater Jack's upbeat feel grabbed me, and then I was taken in with So Far Away and It's Too Late. I'd obviously heard Will You Love Me Tomorrow and Natural Woman in their other guises of the Shirelles and Aretha Franklin, but I liked the versions on here as well. I don't remember where I first heard the album, but I can remember going into Josham's record shop to buy it. It's certainly an album that has made me open-minded to the likes of Carly Simon and Ricky Lee Jones years later. The same year, I was bowled over by T-Rex. He looked strange, his voice sounded strange, but I loved his music. Get It On picked me up, shook me by the neck, and I was hooked. Jeepster was even better, and songs like Cosmic Dancer and Life's a Gas with their weird names really made me think they were the next great thing. And they were. When I saw him on Top of the Pops, I knew they'd got me. I just loved the songs, and I was definitely going to be buying more of their records. When I heard Band on the Run in 1973, I just had to buy the album. It was the first album I'd bought by any of the ex-Beatles, as it was one that really made me feel like he was back. I hadn't really liked his earlier solo singles, but Jet sounded great, and I thought Wings might be really good. And when I got into the album, well, I was transfixed. Bluebird and No Words were favourites, but to be honest, there wasn't a bad song on it. Even today, I still think it's a masterpiece. We're at the halfway point of the video, and if you're enjoying it, it would be great if you could hit that like button, as it lets me know that I'm making videos that you connect with. If you'd like to tell me about albums that have influenced you, please feel free to leave me a comment down there. And if you're new to the channel and finding the content to your taste, check out some of my other videos too. And if you like them, click the subscribe button twice and YouTube will let you know whenever I post a new video. Right, let's get back to it. I was hooked by Queen from the single 7 Seas of Rhye, which surprised me because I'm not really a rock lover, or at least at 13 I wasn't. But Queen seemed different. Killer Queen was Something New, and Now I'm Here was a cracking single as well. I bought the album on the chance that I might like it because I liked the singles. And what I got was a really diverse album that seemed to have a bit of everything. I loved the music hall feel to Bring Back Leroy Brown, and In the Lap of the Gods was like going to the opera. It was just a great album, and it put them firmly in my vision for years to come. Rounding off a triple of 1973 albums, and proving that I like an eclectic mix of music, I head back off into Soulsville with Al Green's album, Call Me. I'd gone to London visiting friends and family, and one of my cousins had the album. I didn't know too much about Al Green and the important role his music was going to play in my life in the next few years. From the get-go, I loved his voice. There was also something about the organ playing on the album I liked, and it was to be something I loved as part of all of his songs. I was to go on and collect loads of his albums after hearing this initial one, and in the years to come, he was to become what I called my seeing girls partner. Those songs set the tone for my amorous adventures for years to come. I swear without his music in the background, my love life wouldn't have been half as good. Moving on. It's 1974 and David Bowie and Diamond Dogs entered my life. Until Rebel Rebel, I hadn't really taken much notice of him, but that was the single that finally put him right in my focus. I hadn't been struck by his look, and he seemed a bit out there for me, but I was ready to take notice, and this was the first of his albums I bought. And I have to say, I liked it. The standout moments on the album for me were obviously the single and the title track, but the one that really made the biggest impression of me was 1984. This album made me take more of an interest in his music, and from then on until his Time Machine days, I thought he was really good. Next up, although it was a 1973 album, I didn't come across it until 1975 on a visit to see a load of my showman friends in London. As I visited all my mates, they all had this album, and the more I heard it, the more I liked it. Every song was a cover, and John Holt's reggae version struck a chord with me, especially when I heard his version of the Renette song, You Baby. 1000 Volts of Holt has become a staple in my life. It reminds me of so many good times with my mates, and although reggae and its predecessor ska were already part of my record collection, this was an album that made a huge difference to me. And so we come to the last of my 10 albums that have influenced my taste in music. It's 1976, and in the middle of that long hot summer, I heard a song on the radio with a searing guitar break, and I thought, wow. It turns out it was Boz Scaggs and a song called Lowdown. Soon after, I'd picked up the album and I was amazed by how good it was. I couldn't put it into a box and decide what kind of music it was though. It was a bit soulful and it was a bit rock, but I didn't really think it fitted either. All I knew was that I loved it, and it's an album full of little gems that I've loved from that day to this. And so Silk Degrees rounds off my 10 albums that have most influenced my taste in music. Apparently they call it Blue-Eyed Soul these days. And that's it. And if you click up there, I'll tell you about the 10 albums I listen to most.